Nine times out of 10, it's a leadership problem in the middle. Sometimes it can be an executive team. A lot of times it's an executive team that's out of touch, that isn't staying inside there. Quickly realized that I was not cut out to be a daycare person. And as hard as it was for me to realize that, I knew it early and I ended it early. And I think that's something that you want to go into work every day feeling fulfilled. People try to sell you stuff all the time. Oh, we can grow your marketing, we can grow your sale. And so I did that. I spent a lot of money that I shouldn't have
Right.
on things that people told me that instinctively, again, we talked about gut earlier. My gut was like, should I? And I did anyway.
Those clips give you a real sense of Sandra's energy. She's candid, she's direct, and she doesn't sugarcoat anything. In this conversation, we go deep on what it actually takes to build a seven-figure company from the ground up through some genuinely painful early lessons, a philosophy about leadership and brand building that most solopreneurs completely overlook, and how she's navigating one of the hardest transitions any founder faces, moving from being the brand to building one. This is Unfiltered Solopreneur. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to a new episode of Unfiltered Solopreneur. I'm your host, Nikhil. My next guest is a business building powerhouse who got fired 5 days before Christmas, built a website that weekend, and went on to build a seven-figure company by proving that profits start with people, not perks. Sandra, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being on.
Well, I'm excited for our conversation. I'm going to dive right in. Now, you've been an entrepreneur and a solopreneur for about 20 years, but I want to start by rewinding the clock to something you mentioned to me. Now, early on, you opened a daycare, but quickly realized you didn't actually like kids that much. What did that first failed venture teach you about the importance of aligning your business with your personality versus just doing what seems practical at the time?
Yeah, great question. So when I opened up the daycare, I had three small kids and just was looking to make some money being at home and being able to be with my kids. And quickly realized that I was not cut out to be a daycare person. And as hard as it was for me to realize that, I knew it early and I ended it early. And I think that's something that you want to go into work every day feeling fulfilled and all of that. And as much as I wanted to be with my children, um, yeah, you can't do what you don't love, because then you don't end up being the person that you need to be when everyone's gone.
Yeah, it's a valuable lesson to learn early, right? Because I mean, I know so many people who sort of keep going because they think failure is a bad option, but failure to me is I always say if as long as you walk away with a lesson, it's not failure, right? It's
Correct.
only
Yeah.
if you learn nothing that in my mind you could sort of deem it as failure, because so many people otherwise stay tethered to something they don't love and they do it for years, and then like you said, they grow resentful, or they don't wake up every morning excited to go to work, and you also don't deliver with the kind of passion you would if you're doing something you enjoy.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely. And that was a great example. And I look at it as it was an experiment.
Yeah.
And my first kind of venture into true entrepreneurship. And I knew I wanted to work for myself. That was definitely in that DNA piece of it.
Yeah, and I love that you didn't give up that dream, right? So then came the gym. So you mentioned you walk in thinking you bought a business with 300 paying members. First billing cycle, you open the books. Walk me through that moment.
That moment. So when I bought the fitness center, I was a little bit more savvy, I thought, and had vetted the deal with a bunch of people that I knew, a financial person, a banker. I really kind of went through and said, is this a good deal? And unfortunately, the previous owners didn't lie, but they misled what I actually had. So, I was buying this fitness center with 300 members. And at the time, I was a personal trainer at another fitness center. So my brain was like, okay, I'm buying this. I'm going to bring my book of business up and I'm good to go. And the first week of billing, like you said, I billed and it was only 88 members were paying. What had happened is that the previous owners had sold 1-year memberships that I had to honor, obviously, but they took that money and ran. So it was pretty devastating, actually.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, and also I mean, JP Morgan bought a company, Frank, and they were misled in a similar way, right? So there are times when you can do as much due diligence as you want, but if
Yes.
somebody's hell bent on misleading you or lying, then there's very little you can do to,
Yeah.
alleviate that. But yeah, I mean, so then you said there's the scene in your story that I keep coming back to. You're at lunch with your mentor, you're crying. He looks at you and says, "Stop crying, get to work. You know what you're doing."
Yeah.
Tell me, what did he see in you that you couldn't see in yourself at that moment?
I think he'd been a mentor for me for a couple of years, and uh, he saw I'm super driven. I'm a great networker. That's where I met him, and I'm great at building relationships. But I couldn't see the forest for the trees because financially I had laid everything on the line for the business. Took out a credit line. I was not very supported at home with this venture. So there was just a lot of pressure and a lot of pushback that I couldn't get past my own fear, I think, to be honest, and the fear of failure. And as I'm sitting there at lunch with him, and I am literally just bawling my eyes out, and he's just like, "Sandy, stop." He's like, just get to work, do what you do best, and you're going to be fine. And it took some time, it took a lot of effort, but we ended up selling that business for a nice profit with 600 members 7.5 years later. So when I was ready to leave, I was able to leave well. So
Yeah, no, talk about the school of hard knocks, right? But I, I think the most important thing to me is that having these people around you, right? Because especially on this journey, and we talked about this a little bit in the pre-call, I call them angels and truth tellers, but I think those are the most critical people you need to have, because you can have the best business plan, you can have, the best execution, but you're still going to have bumps along the way, which, are inevitable in any business. And also it takes time to build something, right? And you
most
will
likely.
have, there's a guy called Sahil Bloom. I don't know if I mentioned, he mentions building in the dark. And that's what you do for the first few years, right? So I
Yeah.
think these are the people without whom you will not complete this journey. I genuinely believe that.
I believe that too. It did take us about 3 years to get it, to where it needed to be. And I like to think of myself as one of those angels now. So I spend a lot of time encouraging others the way that I was encouraged and giving it back to other people. Just get through that first 3 years and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And so now, in terms of the resilience, we go on, right? 5 days before Christmas, you were fired by your employer.
Yes.
Now, by Monday morning, you'd built a website on GoDaddy,
Yep.
incorporated, and
Yep.
started dialing. Now, most people would have taken the holidays to lick their wounds. What was driving that speed?
I was really mad. I think I was like, what? I did. I cried for I think I cried on Saturday. It was just not a great situation overall. And, and for me, I had really served the clients that we were working with really well. And so for me, it made sense to just go and lick my wounds along the way and learn along the way. I had I've been down the entrepreneurial path a couple of times, and when you wait and you hesitate, that's when you lose. So I knew that I couldn't wait and hesitate. And honestly, anger was really driving me,
Yeah.
which isn't a great thing to say, but it's true.
No, but as long as you channel it the right way, which it sounds like you did, right? And
Yeah.
it's taken me a long time to do this, but before I would get really upset and and go in a different direction or whatever. But now I take the time to sit with it,
Yeah.
lick my wounds, and then move forward, right? Pick up
Yeah.
the lessons, understand what changes I need to make, and then keep moving forward. Because again, the blows are going to come, right? I was speaking to somebody recently who's been, and you may say the same, been in business for 20 years, and there are still downs with
Oh
the
yeah.
others, right? they don't go away.
No. This is not a life for people that don't have the stomach for it, as I always say. You've got to have the stomach for the ups and downs. I'm 6 years into this business, and there's still ups and downs. But I was really grateful. Getting back to your, so dialing up during the holidays. Why didn't I wait? The other piece of that is the holidays, people have a little bit more time to talk to you. So I was able to talk with my clients and talk to the people that I'd been working with. And so we had some more time. So, towards the end of middle of January, 80% of my clients had chosen to come on board with what I was doing.
Yeah. So even in that fog of anger, you were making clear decisions, it sounds
Yeah.
like. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I want to shift gears a little bit to brand building and marketing. You said something on our pre-call that I thought was really interesting. You start with the employees, not the leadership team.
Yes.
So in an industry that mostly sells up to the C-suite, that feels like a very different point of view. So when did you realize that was actually your difference and not just your method?
All along the way in my career. So I started my career off in hospitality and really understood how the people that are actually doing the work really affect your reviews, what people think of you, your reputation. Management's management, leadership is leadership. And yes, we work with everybody, but we often talk to leadership about if you want to get buy-in from the staff, you've got to start there. So many times leadership gets you know, all the professional development, they get all the stuff, the skills and all that. And then they leave all the technical stuff to the people that are working, instead of working with the teams to help them create teams and break down silos underneath of them so that the clients can get the great experience. So that's just been on my philosophy all the way through. And I don't know where it came from, but it's something that I've always practiced in my businesses and in any type of leadership role. I never look at the janitor as being the least person on the totem pole or the dishwasher. I always say if a dirty plate or a dirty fork goes out to a client, guess what? That's your reputation. So that dishwasher is actually the most important person in your restaurant. And it
Yeah.
resonates.
But actually, it makes so much sense when you think about it, right? It reminds me of a story years ago that I loved in brand building, where UPS, for a long time neglected the fact that their biggest brand asset, which could either hurt them or help them, was the delivery people, the last mile. Because if they showed up grumpy and angry and threw your package, that was how you perceived the brand and, didn't want to do business with the company. Whereas if you had a great experience, and you never think of those employees as important, right? I mean, at least a lot of companies don't, to your point.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with you. It's like it feels counterintuitive to me. And also, you're building the bench of your company, right? So if you're not growing them through the ranks, then how are they going to ever, operate at that level and be the best they can be? So
Yeah. And it's the Glassdoor ratings, it's retention, it's attraction, it's all of it. And I think a lot of leaders, when I talk about that, the light bulb just kind of goes off. And, we talk to our CEOs and say, go to where the work is being done. Don't sit in your office and don't talk to the four people around you that are going to tell you what you want to hear. Go and talk to the people that are doing the work and talk to your customers.
yeah, that's one of the things I loved about that show they used to have, Undercover Boss.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
great, right? Because it was eye-opening. Like you could see how much of a revelation it was for these people sitting at 30,000 feet thinking they knew everything that was going on the ground, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I totally agree. And I'm just curious as an aside, but are you finding that, because we've heard so much in the media about companies not hiring at the entry level now, right? Because those tasks can be delegated to AI. Are you starting to see some of that happen in terms of either lack of investment at the lower levels or people not hiring there?
Um, I think it depends on what industry you're in,
Right.
honestly. Yeah. So I've seen a lot of holds on more the professional services side of things and the insurances and some of those salaries. But manufacturing, we do a lot inside the auto body industry. We do a lot inside of cannabis and manufacturing. And even though we're hearing AI is taking over the world, it's not. You gotta have those humans. So we're finding that it's definitely picking up in some of this manufacturing arena. But the professional services people are holding off a bit.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm glad it stays that way because I definitely don't want to be handed my fork from a robot. That's
No, me
gonna
too.
go down well with me. Um, so you describe human power solutions or HPS as industry agnostic, right? Now,
Mhm.
you've made it work at seven figures, which is rare. So I'm always curious when I hear that, though. What have you found are the trade-offs of staying broad as you've grown?
We're in the people business, so I don't look at us as being broad. We're in the people business. So every company has a person, and most issues are around communication. I mean, that's to be honest with you.
True.
So so we're broad in the fact that we do touch a lot of different industries, but we're very focused on the people side of things. And I think that's what makes us different. So we will go in with, this is what we're seeing all around, and this is how we can build this out and to help your company, deal with these issues. But honestly, the issues are the same.
Yeah, that's true. It's human nature, right? It's funny because I remember when I first started consulting with nonprofits, a lot of my friends in the corporate world would be like, "Oh wow, they must be nicer people, no politics, no, And I'm like, trust me, wherever there's human nature, you will find exactly the same, right? So
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's interesting you say that, but also it sort of goes counter to the a lot of the advice branding gurus put out there, right? Of niche down, niche down, niche down. So it's like, they would push you to focus on just one industry, even not uh, you know, uh, be agnostic that way in terms of the breadth.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that, and we get so many referrals from so many different areas, and we work with so many different types of people. I learn a lot, and and our facilitators learn a lot. So I think it also helps with our facilitators too, because it's always a different project. So that keeps them excited, and they're not delivering the same thing all the time, or I'm not delivering the same thing all the time. So it keeps everyone kind of fresh and on their toes so that they're keeping up with the trends and making sure that everything we're delivering is not old or stale.
Yeah, and the other thing I love about it, as a strategist, I always love working across industries. And I always said because you can end up connecting dots that you wouldn't see if you just sort of had blinders on, right?
Yeah.
Because you spend too long inside of automotive or manufacturing, then you sort of start to think a certain way, the industry behaves a certain way. But if you work on diapers one day, CRM solutions the next
Yeah.
day, you can actually find things that, are completely fresh and nobody had even thought about connecting, right? So I,
Right.
I love that strategy. And
Thank you.
even the solutions you bring to clients can be, out of left field in a good way.
Oh, they
Um,
are. They absolutely.
uh, so, and again, I think goes back to, again, there isn't one, and this is what I always tell people, right? There isn't a playbook everybody can use, right? You kind of have to see what works for you. Now, there are some, best practices you can certainly apply, but ultimately you have to build your own playbook
Mhm.
as a solopreneur. So I'm a big, believer in that. So you wrote a book, you did a TEDx, you launched Humanity Rebooted on top of HPS.
Mhm.
From the outside, that looks like one thing reinforcing another. But I've been on the inside of enough of these, right? So was it ever messy in the middle where you weren't sure if you were building one brand or three?
Of course, yes. So with the book was very much tied to HPS, but the branding of the book was not. So, that's been very, our podcast is named after the book. It's sponsored by us. It's, we do our best to kind of bring that all together, but the concepts in the book definitely are tied. Well, when I launched Humanity Rebooted, that was with four other partners, and my part in that is very aligned to what we do at HPS. It's the human side of and re-architecting and re-engineering roles in the age of technology and AI. So that's my part in that company. And Humanity Rebooted is pretty new, so we're still navigating how it's all going to fit. But in my mind, everything is HPS. So, but it's definitely a little bit of a challenge. But I, again, what fun things and what most successful things aren't a challenge. So it keeps me interested and keeps me motivated to continue to push for companies to do better.
Yeah, I'm going to come back and touch on that part of it. But I think it's interesting. I don't think it's a bad thing to experiment, right? People kind of worry that I think you should always be sort of innovating, trying different things, but ultimately find the common thread, right? It's what you don't want to create is complexity for people to have to figure out how you help them, right? That's
Right.
when it's bad. But as long as you don't do that, you can be doing, you can have 8 different revenue streams, as long as there's a
Yeah.
thread sort of tying them all together. Yeah.
Yeah, every single business I've had has had multiple income streams, always. The gym had a bunch of different areas. The daycare didn't, obviously, but I'm a big believer in not putting all of your eggs in one financial basket. So
Yeah, and I think that's a critical strategy for solopreneurs, right? Because
mhm,
we don't have like 14 different product lines, and we don't manufacture widgets. So you absolutely, and every income stream is going to have its peaks and troughs, right? So
right,
you can't rely on one or two. You
right.
have to diversify. But again, like you said, keep it relevant to what you're
Yeah.
doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and we just launched a women's retreat product. We just ran our first retreat last week, so that's also aligned with the main brand. So yeah, always
So
always moving.
Uh, that's great. And so I'm curious, when companies actually bring you in, what do they think their problem usually is, and do you usually discover it's something different?
Yeah. Yes, yes, and yes. The problem that most people will come in and they'll say, our employees aren't motivated, and we have horrible retention, and we need to motivate them. And 9 times out of 10, it's a leadership problem in the middle. Sometimes it can be an executive team. A lot of times it's an executive team that's out of touch, that isn't staying inside there. And then the other times it's their supervisors. They're promoting people that just shouldn't be promoted. So we talk about promoting on personality and people that can get along with people and teaching the skills. And most people promote for the skills, and then they don't realize the person can't lead. And that is a theme that just goes on. And I still can't believe it's happening, but it just goes on and on and on.
Yeah, and it's funny how that happens, right? Because I mean, it's like when you sit down and think about it, it's logical, right? If somebody you have a star performer who's really good at what they do, but you promote them and suddenly they become a manager, they've never dealt with people, they've never managed people, you've never, helped them build that skill. So how do you expect them to suddenly, grow wings and become great at something they've never done before? So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And I think if you do that, then just at least invest the time ahead of time. So that's, a lot of times we'll find that we'll find that and we'll say, let's upskill them, and let's set them up for success. I
Yeah.
think that's really important. And like, even for me, when I hire somebody, we've got 6 people on our team, and I was doing a lot of the marketing. I was trying to be chief cook and bottle washer. And over the years, I've hired different people, and my last hire, I mean, he blows me away. I'm like, I go ahead, do what you do, because he's really good. And so, as a leader, you don't have to know the ins and outs of every single job. You just have to be able to trust the person that you're hiring, and know enough to be dangerous. So,
Yeah, no, I agree. But that's so hard for a lot of leaders, right? Because they feel
mhm.
like the moment you don't need them, they'll become obsolete. So it's something you have to, and maybe men suffer from this more, but that's a different podcast. Eh, you've gone from being the solo facilitator with your mother helping to the
Yeah.
CEO of a 7-figure company. Now, many solopreneurs get stuck because their brand is tied 100% to their face, right? So how have you navigated the shift from moving the brand from Sandra the consultant to HPS the solution?
Yeah, we're in the middle of that right now, and it's
Okay.
it's it's happening. It feels really good that our company's being known, and yes, I am the brand. I don't think I'll always be the selling CEO, because I absolutely love what we're doing, and I love being out there with people. I never want to be at a desk all day, and I'll always continue to facilitate the things that I'm passionate about, because I feel like that's something that I should stay in to make sure that I know what's going on. So I don't think that will ever change. Um, but yeah, so people hear about us, they know about us. I've done a lot with the book and the TEDx and just the overall marketing of the company, and yeah, I think we're in that shift right now. And I've just recently, and that this has been a hard one for me, is like I've hired a director of client services who's actually now working directly with the clients on the scheduling and the facilitators. And that used to be I was very integral in that role. So it's been a little bit hard to kind of dial back from that, but also very freeing so that I can continue to grow our brand.
Yeah. And again, it's like, kudos to you, because that I think is the hardest part for founders, right? Because it becomes so much a part of their identity. And, you've given birth to this entity or this thing you've created from scratch. And then to have to let it go and, almost hand your baby over to somebody else to run with it's not an easy thing. And again, I think I genuinely, and I'm not saying this, but I think women do this better than men do. Men get so attached to, their ego and their identity, so in sort of ingrained with their job and their corporate persona, if you like. So
Yeah.
I think that's harder for men. One thing I want to touch on, you mentioned a minute ago about marketing, right? So what part of marketing your business has always felt natural to you, and what part still feels uncomfortable?
Um, I'm a big shake hands and kiss babies girl. So I love to go out and network and meet people. I'm a big connector. So that's part of our marketing, I think, is just like people. I'm a go-to. So people go talk to Sandy, and she'll get you connected. So I think that piece. The marketing piece has been pretty, as far as online digital, it's been pretty easy, not easy, but we have a lot of content. We have a lot of stuff to get out there. I think the one thing that is hardest for me, people are pushing it, and believe it or not, like, I don't love doing videos. And I get constantly my marketing, here's your video script, like, and I don't know what it is. I really don't love, like, touting what we do, oh, here I am, I'm doing this. And it feels very unnatural for me, but that's the thing that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's taken me a long time to even just do this podcast, because seeing myself, my own face on the screen is not something I've ever enjoyed or wanted to do. So, but you're right. It's sort of par for the course now, right? It's like
Yeah.
I tweet, therefore I am. Well, it doesn't really work with X, but I
Yeah. Yeah.
LinkedIn, therefore I am.
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
funny. So the other thing I want to talk about was, and I'm glad you're really enjoying what you're doing, because the other thing you mentioned in our pre-call is you exit businesses when they become work.
Yep.
Now, most founders wait until they're burnt out to even ask the question, right? So tell us, what are the early signals you've learned to spot before it gets to that point?
When my alarm goes off and I'm like, oh, I don't want to get up. Honestly, that's where it is. If and that does happen sometimes, even in this business. But if it feels like a continual drag and slog, it's for me, it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
And then when I sold the gym, I was so tired. I've been getting up at 3:30 in the morning every day for the 5 years, and working until 9 o'clock at night. It was just a lot. I was grateful. Two of my kids worked with me, so I got to spend a lot of time with them, but I missed a lot of my younger one. So when I decided to sell, it was because I was just tired. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then that's when I went to go work for my employer, because I was like, you know what, I don't want to think about anything. I just want to work and go home and be
Yeah.
done with it. Not in my nature. I did that for 4 years, until the end. But even it wasn't going well. Like, it wasn't for me. So yeah. So I think that's the biggest thing, is like, you have to stay in touch with your body. I didn't feel like exercising. I wasn't eating that well. All the things that you can look at. But I think it's when the alarm goes off, and that's one of the early things that you should be looking at.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're pointing to what we call gut or intuition, right? Because you just know it's not, everyone has bad days. There are days when you don't want to get up, you don't deal with work. But in your gut, you can tell the difference between just a bad day and something that's wearing on you and sort of
Yeah.
eating at your soul, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like the last 2 weeks have been insane for me. We launched Humanity Rebooted. I launched the retreat. I'm just exhausted last weekend. I got up Monday, like, what? Let's go. I mean, so until I lose that fire, that let's go fire, I'll be doing this.
Well, and I can verify you haven't lost it yet because it's clearly coming through right now. So the other thing which I would love to touch on is now you ran HPS for 3 years with your mother helping before you started adding people, right?
Yeah.
Now, a lot of solopreneurs panic hire too early or wait too long and burn out. So
Yep.
when did you finally bring someone in? What was the role? And how did you know it was time?
So I've had mentors along the way, always. I have 3 mentors currently. And as I was growing, and I had a fractional CFO that was helping me get set up with projections and things like that. And, we kind of sat down, and I was really getting stretched, and my calendar, my appointments, all of it. So the recommendation was to hire a virtual assistant, which I did, from Columbia. She was wonderful. She was with me for about 3 years. And so that was my first step. And I used a recruiting agency, a virtual assistant recruiting agency. I've since moved to Upwork. I really enjoy working with Upwork. You get the reviews, and it's a great platform to find people. But I've also, I think for me, it was just the overwhelm of the time and managing my email and everything else. And my mentors all along the way, I meet with them every month and just have that conversation: where I'm at, where am I going, what am I doing, and time value, and where I should be spending my time.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, right? Because otherwise and I'm not talking about like hyper scaling and any of that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
but it's just sort of making sure that you, like you said, and I think that's part of making sure you get up every morning and enjoy what you're doing, right? Because you've got to start to hand off. You can't do everything all the time and do everything well, right?
Yeah.
You really want to focus on the things that are going to help either and bring you joy that help you grow the business too. And then
Yeah.
I love the other thing you said was it's just you hired somebody smart and you're letting them run with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, for me, it was when I wasn't getting back to the clients for days. That's,
Right.
I
You
mean,
realize,
they're
yeah.
your people, right? So, so it's,
True. Yeah, and that's something that's a good point. You have to be in touch with that too, right?
yeah,
When you're at a point where you know, and again, you know when you know, right?
right. Yeah.
So you wrote People Profit. Solopreneurs talk about writing books all the time. Many don't.
Yep.
Did the book actually bring in business the way people promise it will, or was the value somewhere else that you didn't expect?
Yeah. I think if you write a book, you can't expect it to make money. It's not what it's there. To me, that's not why I wrote the book. Um, I really wanted to bring my ideas, to a page, to something. I wanted to be able to write down my ideas and write down my stories and share that with whoever wanted to read it. But I wrote the book for very specific goals. I'm pretty goal oriented. So my goal is to get out on the speaking circuit. So people told me, you got to write a book, you got to have a podcast, and you have to do a TEDx. Okay. So that's what I did. Um, and the book has been really interesting for me. It's added a lot of credibility, and the ideas behind the book, like you said, they're not rocket science, but they're fresh for people. So it's been a really interesting, it's given me a lot of opportunities to get out there and talk. And it's also given me, I've been able to get into new rooms, with
Yeah.
people. So I think I think if you think you're going to, make $1 million on a book, you should probably rethink the reason why you're writing the book.
Unless you're Brené Brown, Adam Grant, then maybe you have a shot, or
Yeah.
Barack Obama, right? I mean,
Yeah.
then yeah.
Yes.
Otherwise, all the bets are off because no, and I love that you said that because I think that there's this misconception, right, that you're writing your authorship and you're attached to it, but like you said, the book will help you open doors. Like think of it as an engine for building credibility and building your business, getting you in new stages, not
Mhm.
selling copies, right?
Yeah.
And I think people sort of mistake those two things.
They do. They do. And no, don't get me wrong. We're an international bestseller on Amazon. We've just, it was a great success. It was a year or so ago, and I'm a what's next person. Like
Yeah.
I'm always the what's next. And so there's another book in me, because I'm passionate about this multi-generational workplace that we're experiencing right now. So that's noodling. So there'll be another one coming out, but it'll just be for more thought leadership and those kinds of things.
That's great. And now with your client services director in place, you'll have a little more time, Sandra, to work on the book.
Yeah, 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 for sure.
So if a solopreneur listening came to you tomorrow with limited time, limited budget, and they could only go deep on one podcast, book, speaking, or LinkedIn, what would you tell them to pick and why? Based on
LinkedIn,
your, yeah,
LinkedIn to get the connections. So all the other stuff, the book, the podcast, I love doing them. It's noise. It's really about making connections. It's about creating your expertise and your leadership and who you are and what you know and getting that out so people can hear what you have to say. Everything else can come later.
yeah, because it's actually a built-in megaphone, right? That you
Uh-huh.
don't have to go in, and I agree, and also don't spread yourself too thin, right?
Yeah.
That's really important. I think
Yeah.
people tend to do that. Um,
Mhm.
so, um, is there something you tried in the first few years when you launched HPS, when you were on your own, that didn't work, that you would tell a new solopreneur to skip entirely?
There's a lot that didn't work in the beginning.
Yeah,
Um, I I listen to some l- people try to sell you stuff all the time. Oh, we can grow your marketing, we can grow your sale, and so I did that. I spent a lot of money that I shouldn't have
right.
on things that people told me that instinctively. Again, we talked about gut earlier. My gut was like, should I? And I did anyway. But I will say, fast forward 5 years later, um, I have invested quite a bit in myself. So I belong to the Edge Mastermind Group, which is run by Dean Graziosi, who is Tony Robbins' partner, which is where the founders of Humanity Rebooted came out of. I'm in a Vistage CE group, which is not an insignificant amount of money. Um, I was ready for those rooms after I kind of stumbled and failed. So I think that's the biggest thing is don't listen to everyone. And if someone's making you promises, I would pause before you give them your checkbook. Don't
Yeah,
spend a
no,
lot in the beginning, bootstrap it.
yeah, absolutely. And there's so much noise out there in terms of people offering you, $100,000 in 30 days, and just, this new CRM, AI powered CRM solution, and it'll bring in, like, 20 prospects a day. And I always say, there are no shortcuts, right? You kind of have to go through the rough and tumble.
Yeah.
And also I say, and one of my favorite things is, like, if your overnight success took less than like 10 years, it's the wrong kind of success.
Right. Yeah.
So, because
Yeah.
I just don't know if there's any other way to, it's brick by brick by brick. There's no other
Yeah.
way to do it.
It is actually
Although,
the funnest part though. I mean,
yeah, I
it
agree.
it's
Yeah.
like the starts and stops and the successes and failures and all of it is actually it's exhilarating. And the failures are brutal. But man, once you get past them and you get on the other side and you fail again, obviously, but man, it's there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, I'm with you. But again, like you said, it's not for everyone, right? It's not a good or bad. Some people just prefer the steady paycheck and, not versus the roller coaster.
Yeah.
And I think we're just all different types of people, and that's okay. Everyone doesn't have to be a solopreneur.
You're
Uh,
right, and I think but having that structure, I'm married, I'm recently remarried, and having that my husband is he loves going to work, doing this thing, and not thinking about anything afterwards, and, but he's super, super supportive of whatever I'm doing, wherever I'm traveling or whatever initiative, and I think it is important to have people in your corner, in your personal life that can kind of help, you know, keep you grounded and bounce ideas off of and just our support or each cheerleaders.
yeah, combined with your external mentors too, right? Who bring a
Yes.
different lens. I don't
Yeah.
think it's either or, right? I think it's important
No,
to
it's
have that.
both. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So if we were to grab coffee 3 years from now, Sandra, what do you want to achieve? What's different? What have you built?
Companies at between 5 and 8 million will have 10 employees maximum. I will be a keynote speaker. and we will be nationwide.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. And I look forward to your next keynote. I watched your keynote in Manila, your TEDx in Manila. I think it was Manila. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was great.
Thank you.
So if you were to give one piece of advice to somebody wanting to start their solopreneur journey, what would you tell them?
Start as a side gig. Make sure that you get some frameworks. Don't, I'm a risk taker, but start and experiment a little bit. And once you can replace your income, then go all in. I was forced to go all in right away. I wouldn't have been my choice to do that.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. In fact, I tell young and people look at me sideways when they want to, straight out of college, they're like, I want to start a business. I'm like, go work somewhere for 5 to 10 years, and then start your business, right?
Yeah.
And I always say, use your corporate paycheck as venture capital, to your point, right?
Yeah.
And dip your toe, because it's going to take you 3 to 5 years to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Yeah, I got my kids are 30, 28, and 26. One is doing construction, he's in the trades, and the other two are in corporate. And both of them have aspirations to work for themselves, but they watched me over the years, and they know. So my daughter's a side gig girl. She works for a major financial company, but she teaches yoga on the side and Pilates, and she's looking at maybe doing something like that. But she's building up her experience, and when she's ready, she's going to be ready. So that's my recommendation.
And I agree, because otherwise you're making decisions from a position of famine and desperation, which is never good. You never make good decisions, right? Now, circumstances sometimes force that, but otherwise lay the groundwork, right? Build the runway. There's no courage in jumping blindly.
There isn't. And there's so many tools out there now. There's so many ways that you can start businesses there's just so many ways now that we didn't have when we were younger.
True. You can reinvent yourself multiple times, right? I remember my father worked for one company his whole life, but that's the way it was then. So,
yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners that we haven't covered?
I think just really have fun. Enjoy the ride. It can be really stressful. Surround yourself with the right people. I can't stress that enough. Is between your personal relationships and your business relationships, you don't have to go it alone, and you shouldn't, because it's just much easier when you have other people on your side.
Yeah, find your tribe and trust your gut, right? That's the other thing. Yes. As you said, you'll know when you know it's not working or it's not, joyful anymore. So
yeah.
So that's a great way to get to our rapid fire round. So I'm just going to throw 5 questions at you.
Okay.
You've sold staffing, Herbalife, gym memberships, and now leadership development. Which one was the hardest to sell?
Herbalife, I think. I did that for 12 years. Yeah, that was probably the hardest, but I learned the most through doing network marketing. That's where I cut my chops in sales.
That's great. And I can imagine you probably have like a steel sales. Like
I do.
persona.
Yeah, no soliciting means welcome in my world. So,
what's the worst piece of business advice you've ever received?
Spend money on marketing. I spend a lot of money on marketing. Not much. I spend money on marketing, but on all the little whatever. What's the word I'm looking for? Like the latest trends. Like, don't do it.
Don't jump on the latest shiny object, right? Which everyone's trying to get you on.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you could have coffee with any founder, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Probably Richard Branson. I think the way he treats his employees, the way he's a free spirit, doesn't care what anyone thinks. I think he'd be super interesting to have coffee with. And I think I can learn a lot from him.
I agree. And if you end up doing it on Necker Island, please send me an invite. I'd like to be a fly on the wall.
Richard, if you're listening, I'll have coffee with you.
I think Richard called Sandra. If you could go back to the Friday you were fired in 2019, What's one thing you'd tell Saturday Sandra as she sat down to build that GoDaddy site?
I think I told myself I was going to be okay. That it's blessings. Things happen for a reason, and it's a blessing.
That's a
So
great way to look at it.
yeah.
I promised you a karaoke question. So, what is your I just closed a big business deal celebration song?
Probably Miley Cyrus Party in the USA. I have two granddaughters who are 8 and 10, so we do a lot of Miley here.
Oh, I love Miley too. So I think there's no shame in that. I love it. And that's a great way to end our session. So Sandra, thank you so much for all your wit, wisdom, and for sharing your story with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really, truly appreciate me being able to share. Thank you.
These are some of my favorite kinds of conversations with someone who has lived it, failed at it, and kept going anyway. And Sandra gave us a lot to unpack. So let me pull out a few things that I think are really worth sitting with. Here's the first lesson. Sometimes the wrong business is still the right teacher. I love Sandra's honesty about opening a daycare and realizing very quickly that she didn't actually enjoy doing it. A lot of people would have stayed in it far too long because it looked practical on paper. It fit her life stage, it made financial sense, but internally, she already knew it wasn't aligned with who she was. I think a lot of solopreneurs stay trapped in businesses that were never really right for them because they confuse persistence with alignment. And those are not the same thing. Persistence matters when the business is hard. But if the business is fighting your personality, your energy, or the way you naturally operate, eventually that friction catches up with you. This is why I always say your business has to fit who you actually are, not just what made sense on paper when you started. The second lesson is a really important one. Most solopreneurs are trying to force clarity before they've earned it. Sandra's entire journey was built through multiple experiments: the daycare, the gym, corporate, staffing, leadership development, speaking, the book, Humanity Rebooted. None of it was some perfectly mapped out vision from day one. And honestly, I think that's important because social media has created this illusion that successful founders woke up with a crystal clear positioning and a 5-year roadmap. Most people don't. Most people figure it out by doing the work. What actually matters early on is paying attention to the patterns. What problems do people consistently come to you for? What work energizes you? What value do clients repeatedly mention back to you? Your positioning usually emerges from repeated proof, not from sitting alone trying to invent the perfect positioning or product idea. The third thing I want to talk about is the business book, because I think a lot of solopreneurs misunderstand what a book is actually supposed to do. Sandra wrote People Profit. It's an international bestseller on Amazon, and when I asked her if the book actually brought in business the way people promise it will, she was refreshingly honest. She didn't write it to make money from the book sales. She wrote it to get into new rooms, to get on stages, to build the kind of credibility that opens doors that cold outreach alone cannot. And this is an important lesson for solopreneurs. A book or a podcast or a TEDx or any piece of long form content is usually not a revenue stream. It's a credibility engine. It's what gets you into rooms you probably wouldn't have had access to otherwise and makes people take you seriously before you've even spoken. I'm actually in the middle of writing a book myself, and the goal isn't the royalty check. It's about the doors it unlocks. So if you're thinking about a book or a signature talk or any kind of thought leadership content, stop measuring it by direct revenue and start measuring it by what it makes possible for your business. And here's the final lesson. Solopreneurs dramatically underestimate how important the right people are around them. Sandra mentioned mentors multiple times through this conversation. The mentor who looked at her while she was crying over the gym and said, "Stop crying, get to work." The support system around her, the people helping her zoom out when she couldn't see clearly herself. I've talked about this before, but I want to stress it again because solopreneurship has become overly romanticized as a solo sport. But the reality is, isolation distorts perspective. When you're building alone, every setback feels permanent. Every mistake feels catastrophic. Every bad month feels like the end. The right people help you maintain perspective long enough not to quit on the bad days. And yes, resilience matters, hard work matters, but a huge part of surviving long-term as a solopreneur is building a support network, personally and professionally. That helps you keep going when things inevitably get hard, and they will get hard. My challenge to you this week is to do Sandra's alarm clock test. For the next 10 days, track your energy for every task you do. At the end of 10 days, look for the tasks that consistently make you want to hit the snooze button. Identify one specific task or client interaction that is fundamentally fighting your personality. That's not a persistence problem. That's an alignment problem. And now you know the difference. Thank you for listening to Unfiltered Solopreneur. If today's conversation made you realize you're still waiting for clarity to arrive instead of finding it in the proof that's already around you, that's exactly what a brand clarity session is for. It's free, and I'm offering a limited number of them. We'll look at your messaging live, uncover the friction, and you'll walk away with 2 specific pivots you can apply immediately. The link is in the show notes. Until next time, keep breaking free from the corporate grind, and remember, your story is your most powerful asset. Live solo or die corporate.